Welcome. This is the absolute best things you need in your app service provider. Now, admittedly, all of this is stolen from both Nuno Maduro and Alex Garrett Smith, but I need to show you all of this anyway, because I have greatly improved my quality of life as a developer when using these tools. So first things first, let's configure our models. So this is two things. One, models should be strict. So this is only if the app is not in production, because especially if you add this in an app you already have running, you would have a lot of problems if you do lazy loading. For example, here. So if you currently would lazy load something, so you have a collection of items and then you access a relationship dynamically, you would throw an exception. And you don't want to do this in production because that would be an issue. Mostly lazy loading isn't that big of an issue, but you want to find the errors where it happens and fix them. So this is a great way to make sure you know when something is lazy loaded, and then, well, you're forced to fix it locally. Secondly, there is prevent silently discarding attributes. This is one that I really dislike in Laravel. Laravel by default, if you for example use update, right, on a model, and there's a array key that is not, you try to set an attribute, but it's not fillable, there will not be any error. It will just ignore it, and that's it. And I've been bitten by this probably 4 or 5 times in my life. I think I wouldn't be bitten by it anymore. At least I would hope to believe that. But, well, it has been a big time sink in my life, so I'm just making sure this will never happen to me again. And then the same thing for preventing accessing missing attributes. That's a mouthful. It makes sure the same thing, but in the other way around. So if you have a model and you try to access something that doesn't exist, it will throw an exception as well. So for example, if we have version find 1, and then we try to access, like there's ID is there, right? But if I would access that, I would throw an exception instead of just returning null. So these are the things that should be strict activate. So that's why I've been only using them in production, but in other cases I'm not using them in production. So I use them locally or in staging. I will see if there's any issues. At the same time, I don't like my models guarded at all anyway, so I do always unguard all my models. This is just the equivalent of setting model, like the unguard attribute. So guarded equals empty array in your model. That will be the same thing as using unguard everywhere. So what else do we have? There's one more very useful life-saving command, and that is this one. Let's actually import this. This should be correct for that. All this does is make sure that some of the artisan commands that you could execute in any environment cannot be executed in all environments. For example, if we go to the definition of this, so migrate fresh is disabled in production. Migrate refresh, disabled in production as well. Migrate reset, disabled. There's the migrate rollback, so rolling back migrations, the last migrations you did, disabled as well. And db wipe, understandably disabled in production as well. So this is useful to not, well, do things you shouldn't do in production. And you can extend that as well in your commands. You can say this is a command that should be prohibited. So if you have a command that should be prohibited, you can make sure it's caught by that as well. Furthermore, to make sure your app is only serving over HTTPS at all times, you can use this facade function, which is from facade's URL. And this just makes sure Laravel does never answer any non-HTTPS requests. this is the most important things. There's one more that the others like to do as well, which I do not like, and that is, I think it's date, use, then carbon immutable, right? So I would like this. I would like this really much, actually, but I have one issue with it. So if I use date use, then let's regenerate my helper code. First, what this does effectively make sure that when you do now, you would get back a carbon class. But the issue is, now that I actually do get back a carbon immutable, so if we, oh wait, how can I do this? Well, let's try, there's some cool extension for PHP Storm, which is Laravel Tinker. And I just open a new console. So if I do now, we should see that we do get, my computer's slow for some reason, we get a carbon immutable. But my issue is that my IDE says I do not get a carbon immutable. So that's a big issue for me, because I don't like being lied to by my IDE. So if I switch back this thing, let's see, now we should be back to a normal carbon class. So now the classes are correct again. And well, all my static analysis with PHP stan is destroyed by that. So if anyone has a elegant fix to make sure the class stays consistent, so the return type, well, probably you should just create your own helper, I guess, and then return your own carbon immutable. But I just want to stay at the default as much as possible. Now, so you just have to remember to always, after doing this, if you save in a variable, to do toImmutable, and then you have a carbon immutable again. Well, for some reason it doesn't output it, but if you go here, you can see the return type is now a carbon immutable, so everything works, and you have an immutable. And, well, you just have to remember to use it. I wish it wasn't that way, but if anyone has a great solution to do that, please tell me, and I will include it in this video, or in the next video, I guess. Of course, these methods by themselves do nothing if they're not in your boot method, so let's add them finally to this. Then we want to configure our models, we want to configure our commands, and we want to configure URL, and then we're done. Our app is configured, and those settings will be used on every request. So thanks for watching. Tell me if you have anything you put in your AppServiceProvider, and yeah, see you in the next video.